Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live right here on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. Meadow, Schmelk, you, the phones, 201-939-4513. It's our first show since the game on Friday night, and we've had a couple of days to marinate in what happened, but we obviously take your calls and talk about that. That'll be the focus of our open. We also had some practice today, one that I thought was dominated by the defense, especially up front. They were in the backfield, especially in that last couple of drives of practice. Leonard Williams, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Azeez Ojulari, all of them made periodic visits into the backfield during practice
That's
today.
one way to put it.
Yes, obviously there was no contact, but there were a couple coverage sacks in there too, Lance, where there was good defense in the secondary. So I thought the defense had a fire lit underneath them at some point. They came out today and were pants on fire at practice today.
Yeah, Daniel was running for his life, it seemed, more often than not, because he had no angles to throw the football to. It speaks volumes of the defense.
And when he wasn't, he couldn't find anyone open down the field.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. He just took off, or they wound up getting to him. I also thought, and once again, this is not reading too much into one practice, but it just looked kind of sloppy on offense today, John. There were a few bad snaps as well.
Yep,
and I think that was probably a product of the defense getting the better of them, but something tells me that the film is not one that they're going to put up on the wall and continue to watch and pat themselves on the back, at least from an offensive standpoint today.
You know, it was a hot one today, too.
Oh, was it ever? This was that type of weather
there
where you didn't have to move and you were sweating or you felt like you jumped into a pool.
Yeah, I went out there, and then, 5 minutes later, the sun broke out from behind the clouds, and the sun was kind of behind me, and you just feel like the sun on the back of your neck and the back of your legs, and I'm like, I better go get a hat, because it was a rough one out there.
Yep.
Not a rough one for the Giants in the preseason game on Friday. They come away with the win. And, it was a close game, but when the starters and backups came out of the game, the Giants were up a couple of scores in this game. So I thought they played particularly well, and I guess we'll start first, Lance, with that first-team offense. I mean, you can't really script it up much better than that. It wasn't a perfect drive, but it was kind of as close as you're going to get on an NFL drive for how that drive went. 10 plays, 75 yards, 5 first downs, a touchdown. The only negative on the drive was really a Daniel Jones incomplete pass to Darren Waller that he put on him, maybe a little bit late. It gave the corner, or I think it was a corner up, step up, hit him, the ball hit the ground.
It was a safety, right? Wasn't it Von Bell, I think?
It was Von Bell. It was a safety. You're right. Thank you. And it was ruled incomplete, but really, if that's, and this is what I wrote on our cover 4 on Giants.com this weekend, there's a chance, and I will, not based on any information I have, but just based on my instinct, I think there's a good chance that's the only time we're going to see that entire first-team offense out there on the field together over the course of this preseason. To get that, I think Brian Dable was very happy to say, all right, 10 plays, touchdown, you guys are done, off the field, see you later, sayonara, nice seeing you, we'll talk to you against Dallas on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, he may have not showed it after the game because he wasn't necessarily jumping, jacking all the way through the media questions, but I do agree. I think he's content with what he saw. I still say if you wanted to put them out for another series, I don't think it's a crime. I don't think it necessarily hurts it.
I wouldn't have a problem with it either, but my gut is that it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think that most coaches operate from, okay, I want to get a little bit of the rust off. I want to see whether or not what we saw in practice translates to games. We were able to move down the field. It wasn't as if it was a shortened drive off a turnover. We saw how everybody operates. We finished in the red zone. All in all, you covered. See, John, to me, it's not just getting the starters out there. It's the fact that you put them up a litmus test of a variety of different things within a drive that you want to see get done.
One thing they didn't do on the drive, run the football.
Yeah, well, Saquon wasn't even on the field on that drive.
Well, not even Saquon, but run the football with a running back. They passed on every single play.
Yeah.
And look, guys, this wasn't complicated concepts. They weren't sending 4 or 5 guys into the route. Carolina played zone for most of the drive. They threw a couple short ones to Waller. They had a couple play-action boots, get the quarterback on the move. You saw Daniel Jones use his legs on one play to get close to a first down. So it was the type of stuff that the Giants have schemed up before, whether it was play-action, quick passes, quarterbacks running, that worked for the offense last year and looked like they were back and just good to go. But again, you're not going to see anything crazy in the preseason. As we spoke about, I think it was on Friday's show when me and you did it. Preseason is a liar, so obviously don't go out of this and say, oh my gosh, Darren Waller is going to be my first overall pick in fantasy. The team's going to get 430 yards per game.
And the Giants will score on every drive, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So remember, preseason's a liar. The Panthers are being very simplistic. The Giants were also being very simplistic. But from the short dosage you had, you can feel good. that the offense looked strong. And again, most importantly, and this is why, again, it's just my gut, I don't think we'll see the Giants' first-team offense or defense for the most part again. The most important thing, Lance, most of the or all the starters at least came out of that game healthy, and nobody got hurt.
Well, that's the ultimate goal. You ask any coach, any team, they want everybody to survive the bulk of the preseason and be ready to go for the start of the regular season, even though there is that 2-week window built in after the last preseason game. We were talking about this a little bit on Friday. That's why if you did want to play some of your starters, I have no issue with that. But from what you read into, what you take away from that drive, it was efficient. Guys were in the right place. You were able to run through the basics. Anything beyond that, I think, is adding a bit of hyperbole here into the conversation. Carolina, you have to understand, teams are not studying opponents in the preseason. They're not going out of their way to strategize how to slow them down. Carolina also did not have its best pass rusher on the field, too. Let's not forget about that. This is not to take anything away from what the Giants accomplished. Brian Burns, correct. All this is it's the fact that you want to be encouraged that they can get through the natural assignments and you're able to finish a drive. And there was a little bit of the idea, hey, if Darren Waller is that good, that teams are going to have to take notice of him. And as a result, that will open things up for other players on the field. That, to me, is maybe the biggest takeaway, John, more so than anything else, because clearly you saw on the touchdown to Bellinger, Carolina's defense said, okay, Waller's had his fun. Enough is enough. We're going to pay a little bit more attention to him. And then that's how all of a sudden on the opposite side of the field, Bellinger is left open and he's able to make a play. So that was the thinking that we discussed all throughout the course of this offseason, how one game changer completely changes the dynamics of your offense. But most important, it changes how the defense views you. And that, to me, could be an indication of what we'll see moving forward. Anything else beyond that, I don't think is necessary to read too much into, but you do like the level of efficiency that they were able to showcase on that opening drive.
Yeah, we saw a couple different formations as well, a couple different personnel groups, which is good to see. Other notes for the game, Lance, I'll kind of take them one at a time here. Jalen Hyatt had the lone 30-plus yard play for the Giants. Isaiah Hodgins had a 25-yard catch. That was a short catch and run. But Jalen Hyatt had that big pass downfield. They got him out on that free safety. He faked the little post or over route, went back out to the little flag corner route, and really left the safety in the dust for a touchdown. The pass was even a little bit behind him, but he had so much separation that it really
seemed it was up there for a year and a Sunday.
Exactly. So that one, I believe, was from Tyrod Taylor, the 33-yard reception. So, again, good to see Hyde in the air, and I think you saw his explosiveness, and this is the downfield passing game that we've been asking for the last couple of years, and at least in this preseason game, you saw it from the Rook.
And you also saw him bounce back, which may be the best takeaway of all.
100%.
Right? Mental spot early in a game, you're wide open, you can't hold on to the football, and then they go back to you very shortly after that.
Very next play, actually.
Yeah.
Very next play.
So, I think that's what you like to see, especially out of a young guy and any other receiver in that room with Jalen Hyatt, who's been a first-year player, and clearly they all have been, will tell you about a scenario, whether it be in practice, whether it be in a game, they screw up, they have some type of a mental mistake. And, John, you don't always get an opportunity that quickly to right the ship. So he got the opportunity, they called his number, and he made the most of it. I think that's part of the learning curve, right, of any young player, and he answered the call with flying colors. So that's another encouraging sign that, okay, there is going to be a point this season where things are not going to go according to plan for Jalen Hyatt, right? I mean, that's just the nature of the beast of the NFL. He's not going to catch every pass. He's not going to make every play. He's not going to be 100% in terms of his level of execution. So his first taste, NFL preseason action, where he deals with a little bit of adversity and he's able to respond and regroup, that, once again, I think is a very encouraging sign.
Another item on the offense, I thought the pass protection in the first half was pretty good. I saw two plays where it looked like the offensive line had some issues with stunts. One both on the right side of the line with Lewinsky and Neal.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to tell how they're supposed to pass those off a lot of the time, but both are on the right side. One led to that Jones scramble on the first drive that we talked about. The one against that went around on Neal was a little bit later there in that first half. But then I thought Neal and Schmitz on that Gray touchdown run up the middle, it was a little trap play, and those guys got out to the second level, and you saw blocks against linebackers by both Neal and Schmitz. I thought that was good to see in the run game.
I also think that Gray deserves credit for fighting through a lot of traffic in that pile, because I think if you looked at some of the replay angles, you initially thought, maybe he's short. They could perhaps overturn that. I would have not been surprised if that was the ultimate result, but he was able to hold the ball out, and I know in the post-game conversation, he mentioned that the coaching staff could maybe criticize him for reaching out because, right, you're told don't do that because then the defender's going to have an opportunity to knock the ball out.
Unless it's fourth down.
Of course, yes. If it's fourth down,
yes,
it's the end-all, be-all. But anything earlier than that, you won't live to see another down. So, I mean, the fact that he was at least thinking about that after the fact, right, another positive takeaway. But I thought Eric Gray overall, by the way, I don't mean to get off topic here.
No, get to the special teams. I was going to bring that up next. Go ahead.
With special teams, right? If you remember, I think we got a phone call on Friday, concern about putting a young guy out there. It's not the right thing to do. And we said, you got to play, right? He's got to go out there. He's got to get his feet wet. And probably the best thing of all to take away from this last game was to notice the ball sailing out of play, not make an effort on the kickoff, and all of a sudden you get the ball starting at the 40-yard line.
And he had kept his feet in the end zone, so if he did catch it, it would have been a touchback. So just all-around smart play on that.
The fundamentals were on full display, and that was another thing that you see. You could tell just the way also he talks after the game, he's been a sponge here. He's learning from every little nuance of football that he's been exposed to, and I thought he made some huge strides in terms of the special teams play. I know that there was another one of those close calls where he may have not had great footing, but he was able to finally secure the football, and that's going to come. But having the mental fortitude to realize, hey, we could get excellent field position, and I'm in a spot where either the ball goes out of play or, to your point, it's a touchback. Those are the types of split-second decisions you want to see out of a first-year player.
Then another rookie, Jordan Riley, had a nice stop on a 4th and 1. He was a big topic of conversation. Hey, by the way, also on Gray, Dable pointed out today that it was kind of windy, too, on Friday night, so we got to see him deal with a little bit of wind on some of those punts, too, which he was happy about. But back to Jordan Riley, he had a nice stop on a 4th and 1 to close out a drive. He spoke to the media a little bit today on the side. He talked about how he's pretty happy with how he's played the run so far, and he's working on pass rush. And I think when you watch the tape, that's kind of where the strength is. And I know people are very excited about him, and we've gotten some calls. I think his arrow for the roster is probably pointing up. And I know we had a call from Len last week. I think Marcus McKeithen, even though he didn't play in the game, I think from what I'm talking to coaches, I think they're pretty happy with him too. But Riley's somebody. I don't know how much he's going to play, even if he makes the roster, Lance, because he's going to be behind Dexter, Leo, Nacho, A'Shawn Robinson. He's probably the 5th guy in that list. We'll see about Ryder Anderson if how he kind of
he's still dealing with injury
goes into that situation. So he might not even be active on game days a lot of weeks, but I think the coaching staff has been pretty happy with him.
Well, I think the positive here with Jordan Riley, to your point, there's a lot of people ahead of him on the depth chart. That goes without saying. But once again, you can't guarantee me, John, that all those players you mentioned are going to be fully healthy for all 17 games. So you want to walk away with saying, in the event that Week 7 comes around and Jordan Riley has to take on a larger role, we feel good that he's going to be in the right spot. He has the ability to penetrate right in the backfield. He's active. You notice him. And I will go so far to say, John, this. 7th-round picks, a lot of them are roll the dice type of players, right?
Yeah, you're
you
betting
get something
on
out of it,
you're
great, fantastic.
Yep.
I can't remember talking about or noticing a 7th-round pick in the last decade. Is that too much of a stretch here?
It's been a while.
But when was the last time we talked about a 7th-round pick potentially making the roster and having this type of an impact? I can't recall that happening. So, I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself. And here's the other thing. If you're DJ Davidson, who spent the beginning part of training camp on PUP, he's now off of it. I'm sure you're taking notice, right, John? Because every year you get a new influx of players, and Davidson is probably saying to himself, okay, they brought in A'Shawn Robinson, they brought in Nacho, a lot of veteran leadership. I need to find a way to carve out a role, and all of a sudden this kid, Jordan Riley, who was a revolving door in college, I mean, he pretty much put his stamp all over the map, not to make light of it. I mean, he went to community college.
3 schools. Yeah.
I mean, you name it. So, I mean, it's hard enough to solidify your spot, and then all of a sudden, the first 2 preseason games, you're noticing him. And it's not about getting to the quarterback. It's not about sacks. It's about the ugly, dirty work. He's getting in there. He's stopping the run. He's helping them in those short yardage situations. And that's exactly what I think the Giants envisioned when they drafted Jordan Riley. You want somebody to help clog up the holes and shore up what was a major problem last season, the inability to stop the run.
And then I'll just mention Deonte Banks and Trey Hawkins in the game. I thought, both guys are pretty quiet. And for corners, that's good, Lance, because it means they're not getting beat.
Yeah. You do not want to bring up their names. And by the way, speaking of Deonte Banks, I don't know if this was discussed with respect to other individuals on this show, but when the assistants met with the media early in the week, one play that was brought up if you recall, John, about Deonte Banks was the play from the first preseason game when he was on Jameson Williamson. And there was a big debate about he was trailing on the play and whether or not that was good positioning. You know, he has that reach, that lengthy arm that could help knock the ball through. And the reviews from the coaching staff seemed to be they were very pleased with where he was positioned on that play, even though it looked as if perhaps the offensive player had a step on him. So I think it's another indication, you know, we throw out Pro Football Focus numbers here and there, that the lens of the coaching staff is sometimes different than what the naked eye tells you when you're watching from afar in a game. I thought that was an interesting observation.
I was surprised,
when the assistant spoke.
and I was honestly surprised.
Well, and I
when they
too,
said that, to be honest,
as well, because I think anyone watching that was like, you know, that happens again.
And the ball was dropped before his arm got it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I brought that up. Now, is that the coaching staff looking to encouraging? I'm sure that may be part of it, but I also don't think they needed to go out of their way.
That's also true.
To do that as well. That's why I want to say, and that was Jerome Henderson, by the way, who I'm referring to, who had mentioned that.
Yeah, and we actually, Paul and I had that exact same.
Oh, you did? Okay, I wasn't sure.
I'm happy you gave your 2 cents.
Yeah.
Because me and you, with the way you just described it, we were on the same page.
Yeah.
We're like, but you know, Jerome said he was happy with where he was, and he got his hand in there. So, one more thing. Anything else on the game you want to touch on?
I thought those were all the plays. Actually, one other play I did want to bring up, John.
Ahead.
Bobby Okereke.
Oh, yeah.
I think we should highlight him,
sure.
right? He was tied for the team lead with 7 tackles, and that's great. But there were a number of plays where you could tell the running back was sort of iffy which direction he wanted to go, and Okereke didn't overcommit. I think there was a play on the left side, I want to say, and I'm referring to him facing the left side, where he was in the middle of the field. The running back was a little bit jumpity, and then he finds the hole on the left. And McKinney did a great job hustling over to make the stop, but Okereke was there as the insurance policy to help clean it up. So that's another indication. All the indicators of what we thought about, okay, everything looks promising in stopping the run. That, I think, is adding up so far in the preseason.
And he also had a blitz, Okereke, where he ran over Chuba Hubbard, just like trucked him and knocked him down, which is also fun to see. And the last thing before we get to your calls at 201-939-4513, I thought, and I'll reference this back because we kind of touched on how the rookies did in the game, right? I thought some of the things Brandon Brown said this morning, and I just kind of want to bring it back in terms of how they scouted and found some of these guys late, like the Jordan Rileys and the Trey Hawkins. And even Jalen Hyatt, and it's a little bit of a separate conversation, but I'll throw both at you. You can take it any way you want. He more referencing Hawkins and Riley. He's like, look, he has traits that he's good at certain things that we know is important to our coaching staff. You know, Hawkins, physicality, length, speed. Jordan Riley, size, strength. And while maybe some of the tape is uneven and there's a lot of things they have to work on, they have faith in the coaching staff, and, you know, especially you look at the experience of the defensive line coaching staff, one of the, you know, best defensive line coaches in the past, 10 years. He's just Andre Patterson. He's fantastic.
Dr. Dre, by the way, apparently.
Dr. Dre,
that's
which
what they
I like. Correct,
yeah,
I like that.
It's pretty neat.
And then you have Jerome Henderson in the back half, who Wink has been effusive in his praise for him, and they've really turned these traits into guys that can help early on. And then back to Jalen Hyatt, because this is a conversation we had on the show a bajillion times last offseason leading into the draft. And they asked Brandon Brown behind. He goes, yeah, look, we had to do a lot of extra homework because we had to understand, was he not doing more in their offense because he was incapable of it? Or was that just the scheme? So we talked to his coaches, we talked to these guys, and we learned that he had a lot more to give than what he was being asked to give in that offense. Now, this is why, and we always say this when we do our draft stuff here, right, Lance? We can only see based on production and what's on the tape. We don't have the ability to talk to coaches and guys like that to find out what else these guys can do. And they had some insight that, look, they thought Jalen Hyatt can do more than what he showed at Tennessee, and I think early returns are positive for him and those other two guys. And I think he did a good job of encapsulating of how the scouting process helped the Giants find some of these guys that, at least in the early going, and there's still a long way to go, guys that maybe could help them as early as this year.
Well, especially since you're seeing contributions in the early stages. And once again, we got to go through the regular season. Consistency is so important.
We need to play a real game first.
Yeah, before all of a sudden we start crowning these individuals. But no, I thought Brandon Brown really went into the details about Also, the involvement, John, of multiple individuals in the front office and the scouting department.
Tim McDonald.
Yeah,
yep.
Dennis Hickey,
Dennis
who he credited
mentioned.
with
Yep.
finding Jordan Riley and saying, hey, guys, you may want to go to a few extra games and notice him, because I think he had mentioned it was Dennis Hickey who saw him and
went first.
immediately
Yep.
noticed his presence. And then Tim McDonald and Brandon Brown went, and then they basically said, okay, yeah, there's something here that is not just face value, that if we apply him on the field, that we can make the most of him. And when you find the guy who you can notice, who, once again, John, I go back to, if you look at his sample size before Oregon, I mean, it was hard to tell who Jordan Riley, the player, was.
No idea.
I mean, some years a redshirt year, other years a complimentary guy. And even the stuff that he did at Oregon, he's not the first guy you notice when you put on the film.
You're constantly changing systems, changing
it's
coaches.
crazy.
It's very hard.
So to be able to identify that.
That's why they're professionals and we're
Yeah,
not.
no, without a doubt. And once again, we got a long way to go, but,
Right.
and I get it, it's, something that you're seeing, I'm sure, with other teams. They get input from all individuals. I mean, that's how you build a very strong scouting department. But what Brendan Brown was doing, and this is really what I like to hear from members of the front office, they don't speak in generalities. They give you specifics. Like, he was exactly on point. This individual went to see this guy on this day in practice, which led to this decision to then see X amount of games. And, that really, I thought, brought us behind the curtains to give us an idea of how the communication and the operation works.
Yeah, and to how they work with the coaching staff, too, in terms of Hawkins and Riley. So I thought it was very interesting, and it shows how, if you really have a good understanding of what your coaches need from certain positions to have success, you're going to be able to find players up and down the draft.
Well, because to piggyback off of your point, one of the things that Brendan Brown mentioned is they go to Wink, they go to Kafka, and they ask them, okay, give me traits you're looking for in a player. And when Wink gives you the list of, okay, I need X, Y, and Z because I'm going to ask a corner to play press coverage, meaning I want him to be physical at the line of scrimmage. I may ask the corner to come and help at the line of scrimmage to stop the run. If you don't find the trait of physicality when you're scouting a corner, I don't want him, because I don't see how we're going to be able to fine-tune him and fit him into the defense. With Hawkins, they saw that physicality, they saw that length, they saw special teams. He encompassed all of those factors that, once again, the Giants are now trying to tap into.
Run or walk with Giants legends. The Giants Foundation will host a 5K racing kids run presented by Quest on Sunday, October 8th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative T-shirt. After the race, stay for a festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. Single game seats, they're available. They're officially on sale. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium this season. Visit giants.com/tickets to secure your seat today. All right, we got a bank full of calls. Let's try to bang through as many as we can today here, folks, at 201-939-4513. And start with Donnie in Queens. In fact, Donnie, I believe, is the caller you referenced from last week, Lance, that had worries about Mr. Gray on punt and kick return. Donnie, what did you think?
Punt return's not good. Again, catching one, running up and falling to the ground. He's not ready to do it when the bullets are flying for real. And that was kind of my call and my question. I mean, look, definitely a heads-up play on the kick. But, those are less pressure plays. There's a lot more room to operate there, as we talked about last week. If I'm not mistaken, Jamison Crowder has a history of returning punts. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And so to a lesser extent does Cole Beasley.
Yeah, so, I mean, to me, I just don't like a guy learning that job basically in a training camp when he's got a million other things swirling around him as a rookie. It just seems like it's too much for him. He's not quite getting there, and you could talk about the wind swirling. Well, guess what? That wind's only going to pick up.
Now, Donnie, I will say this. We have not seen a big mistake from him. We have not seen that. And by the way, not in practice either. He has not really dropped it in practice either. I'm being honest with you.
Sure, and look, that's good, but he's never under that ball cleanly catching it. It always seems like he's sprinting up to it or moving as he's getting. I mean, he's had 8 punt returns in a couple games, and he's caught 2 of them going to the ground. It just doesn't look right. And then you couple with that with his history of it in college, it just doesn't look good. But look, something to continue to keep an eye on. The coaches aren't stupid. They're thinking this too. They probably know. They may have some veterans in their back pocket if they have to go to it. But just overall about the game, then I'll hop off because I know you guys have other callers.
Sure.
I thought good, clean operation mostly. The defense had some gas there with the neutral zones, that's not something I'm concerned about. That's never going to probably happen ever again.
They also had a roughing the passer penalty. There were a lot of there were 10 penalties throughout the game, which Brian Daboll was not happy about.
And by the way, the Dexter Lawrence penalty was identical to the Baldonado penalty in the first preseason game.
If you hit a quarterback in the head, it's going to get flagged.
Yeah.
It's just
it doesn't matter the force. Stay away from the head of the quarterback. Well, don't give the official. No, I know it's ridden with force.
It has to be a forcible blow, but yes, just don't give him the option.
Yeah, because John,
100%.
The bottom line is, no, I'm not saying that you're disputing this, but I look back at the rules. It does reference force, but the official is not evaluating that in real time about your hand came 30 miles per hour.
They're erring on the side of
exactly.
caution
there, you hit the helmet. Period. It's a flag.
No,
End of discussion.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. My takeaway in a play like that is that Dexter destroyed his man, and more times than not, he won't inadvertently hit a face mask. So
that is the correct way to look at it, Donnie. Correct.
They got out of the game healthy. There was good things to build off of. I'm sure there's a lot of coaching tape. We're 3 weeks from today. I'll be waking up after a long night at MetLife, hopefully a good one. So let's just continue to stay healthy. Like you said, this is all really fool's gold, all this stuff. And, we'll keep an eye on things as we go forward. So appreciate the time, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Donnie. Good stuff. So he's still not on board on the punt returns.
Well, and I referenced that earlier when we were talking that he did lose his footing again. So that's happened 2 times. No dispute there.
Absolutely.
But I still think that they want to give him every opportunity. Jadon Minkins, by the way, is another player that has some punt return exposure and experience. But here we go back to what you and I were talking about on Friday. If they don't have the luxury to keep an additional receiver who is specifically a special teamer, this is where you're going to give the young player like Eric Gray an opportunity. And based on how the mathematics play out, and there's a number of injuries, by the way, that Brian Daboll ran through yesterday. I'm not saying anything serious, but Jason Pinnock, by the way, who we didn't bring up, is now dealing with a leg injury. We don't know what the roster is going to look like, John, as we get closer to cutdown day. And now you may have to keep an additional safety. You may have to keep an additional defensive lineman. You don't have the ability to now all of a sudden hold on to an extra wide receiver simply because he could return punts.
You see the sheet, Pearson, with the injuries on it?
That's
you see
where
the list of players?
Yeah, I have it up in front of me too, John, if you want me to read through it.
Yeah, today, Phillips, Anderson, Jack Anderson, Ryder Anderson also, by the way.
Yeah, who's already been out.
Brightwell, Sweeney.
Yep. Cam Brown,
Cam Brown,
Nick McLeod,
Jason Pinnock, and Cordell Flott.
Yep.
And I missed one name, and I can't read what I wrote.
No, I think you got through everybody. Beasley.
Oh, that's Cole Beasley. Thank you.
Yeah. I can read your handwriting better than you can.
Apparently, yes. So those are the guys that did not practice today.
Yeah, but that's a lengthy list. And once again, I'm not saying anything is serious. And he was asked, by the way, about Wan'Dale Robinson's status. I crack up.
What did he say? I missed that one. I wasn't there for Coach.
No, somebody asked.
I was busy at the dentist.
I want to read you the exact question. Is Wan'Dale Robinson any closer to coming off of PUP? Brian Daboll's response, yes, a day closer.
Deadpan, correct?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's always the end. No, because we get calls. I think it was Paul and I. We had a conversation about, right now it's the land of the unknown with Wan'Dale Robinson. So callers come up and be like, no, but Daboll said he's getting closer to returning. Can we relax? Just like you shouldn't read so much into preseason games, let's not overanalyze the press conference. We've been hearing Wan'Dale Robinson's getting closer, I feel, for the last few weeks. It's what's called coach speak.
Well, remember, I can take a step outside this building, take one step to my right. That means I'm one step closer to California.
There you go.
Guess what? I'm still not close to California.
Yeah, good luck finishing that trip, by the way.
One day closer to Christmas.
We are, exactly.
There you go.
We are we are one more second closer to Christmas. So
yeah, the ball in Times Square is getting one
that
inch
hasn't moved
closer
yet.
to. In my mind, though, it's moved slightly, okay? The bulbs were checked and fixed, so it did move. Okay? It maybe shook to the right and shook to the left. It moved, though. Trust me. My sources are very reliable and strong.
Exactly. So if you're getting closer, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're close. Or he could be close. He could be activated tomorrow for all we know.
Well, and these are all mind games that we are sudden being chess and checker parts in. Yes.
All right, let's go to Tom in Stratford. He's up next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Tom, what's going on?
Hi, gentlemen. I'll be fast because I know you have a lot of callers on. And Lance, I don't think we've ever talked about a 7th-round draft pick. I saw Jordan Riley actually started the game. I thought that was pretty good. I was very disappointed that Jihad Ward lined up offsides. I mean, I could see that on TV. I don't know why he didn't see it. I'm going to give Banks a pass on that because, he's playing all the way out on the outside. It's hard for him to see the ball away, even the line of scrimmages. But, you know, when you're a linebacker and you're right there, you should be able to see it.
And I will say this, and again, I have to look at it again. I think Banks apparently did check with the official on the sideline, and he kind of gave him the thumbs up, but then he threw the flag anyway. I don't know if that's true or not. But the bottom line is, any pre-snap penalties, I'm not giving anyone a pass on anything. Just line up in the right spot, please. Just line up in the right spot. It's the basics.
Right. And I thought Tebow had a good game against a quality offensive tackle. I can't pronounce his name, but
Tim?
I think he was
Yeah, Tim Tebow? Is that who you're referring to? I didn't know Tebow gave up broadcasting and joined the Giants.
As an offensive lineman, too. Very impressive. Exactly. I knew he played tight end. Tom, who are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean Kayvon Thibodeau?
Oh.
Yeah, Kayvon.
Oh,
Thibodeau.
Yeah,
okay.
Thibodeau.
Yeah.
So we can practice. It's just like the Knicks head coach, Thibodeau.
Thibodeau.
There you go.
Rolls
Very
off the
good.
tongue. Congratulations.
Good job.
I thought he had well, can you help me pronounce the offensive tackle that you
Oh, that would be Ike Ekwonu.
Yes,
Ike
from the Panthers.
Ekwonu. He was almost a Giant last year, by the way. So
We
almost had
talked
to
a lot
pronounce
about
his
him.
name
Yeah,
too.
sure. Yeah.
But I didn't bother learning his name since we didn't draft.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I thought I'm going to disagree with the previous caller. I thought that was a nice play by Gray when he ran up and caught that ball. I thought he made smart decisions on the kickoffs, and I actually liked his blitz pickups.
Yeah, you know what, Tom, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just want to jump in. I think his blitz pickups were strong. He's very eager to get in there. He's very willing to block. I think maybe they'll go back and look at the execution on a couple of them. Then maybe they could have been a little bit cleaner in terms of technique. But yes, he is working his butt off trying to be good at blitz pickup, because if he plays on those third downs, he's going to be challenged on them.
Right. And I thought Glowinski was fortunate he wasn't flagged for holding on Gray's 9-yard touchdown run.
I'd have to look at that again. I'm not sure about that.
And then, you know, do you know how many wide receivers they plan on carrying? Because,
Nope.
I mean, they all looking pretty good.
I would say probably the most likely number right now is 6, but you know, depending on what happens with Wandell, 7 would not shock me either. But it'd be tough because you just run out of spots.
Yeah, I always lean towards 6, and I think it was maybe last year or the year prior they kept 7, but then they wound up making another transaction, so they ultimately didn't have 7 wide receivers heading into week 1. So that's another thing. You know, they could keep 7 initially because they're impressed, and then all of a sudden somebody gets available on the waiver wire, they have to make another move, and by the time week 1 rolls around, you only have 6 wide receivers at your disposal. And I'll lean towards that, despite what we're seeing depth-wise.
Okay. And how is JMS snapping the ball? I heard you mention that there was some snapping issues. Is he doing that dead snap thing?
Yeah, it wasn't Schmitz that had the snapping issues.
Okay. All right.
It was the backup.
Yeah.
And 2 more things. I mean, I love how Bob Popper calls the game on TV. He tells you who's lining up where, you know, because it's really hard to tell when you're watching it on TV. So he does a great job there. And I was also wondering if you guys are going to have a 53-man prediction show this week, since we're not going to talk to you after the last game and before the cutdown.
Oh, yeah, we are. We're going to talk to you next Monday, my friend. Cutdown day is next Tuesday. I think what time is cutdown day?
Usually it's 4 o'clock.
Is it 4 still? Yes.
We're
gonna have 2 shows then before we get there. So yes, you will have our full roster predictions next Monday and next Tuesday.
Okay. I for some reason I thought the cutdown was like on Saturday or Sunday.
It used to be,
in years past, it has been.
And Tom, thanks for the call. Yeah, when you used to have that 4th preseason game, they would do it because that 4th preseason game was on a Thursday, and then they would let people go on that Saturday.
Correct.
Sunday would be waiver claim day, and then Monday you would, add your waiver guys, drop whoever you're not going to keep, and then that's kind of how that would roll.
Yeah, and that would usually be over Labor Day weekend because, Monday of Labor Day is usually the start of typically the first week of the regular season.
No one's happier with the new arrangement than the people that work for NFL teams. Not on the football side because they're working anyway, but people like Dan Salomon upstairs, no one is happier that he does not have to worry about putting those roster pages together on Labor Day weekend.
Yes, and it is 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm looking it up right now.
So we're going to have 2 shows next. We're going to have shows on Monday and Tuesday. Make sure you check it out. And by the way, starting tomorrow, it was supposed to be today, but since practice got moved back to a regular time, we kept the show at 1:30 today, starting tomorrow, and for next week as well. Shows will be at 11 a.m. to accommodate the practice schedule for this week and next. And then unless they change the regular season practice schedule, which I suppose is always possible, but right now it looks like we'll be back at 12:30 Monday through Friday once the regular season starts. So we'll move it around a little bit. Again, starting tomorrow, 11 a.m. for a Big Blue Kickoff Live, and then we'll get back to our normal time at 12:30 the week of Labor Day. And I think we'll probably try to do a show on Labor Day. We'll have to figure that out. I haven't thought that far ahead yet. 201-939-4513. 201-939-4513. Go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast, folks. It features interviews with current and former Giants. The one that just went up today, I had a chance to talk to R.W. McQuarters about the big 2007 Super Bowl run, the big win against Dallas. Of course, Giants take on Dallas in week 1 of the season. So check that out. We have other good shows coming up later in the week. Dan Hatman, who basically runs a scout academy and teaches scouts. So we did a full hour on how you scout players. That's going to be on the Giants Huddle podcast, and it's going to be on draft season as well. So go check that out on the Giants app, favorite podcast platform everywhere, and at giants.com/podcast. And don't forget to go download Giants TV, the Giants official streaming app. It brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV. And don't forget the Giants mobile app. Finally, when you're on that app, go check it out. Become a Giants season ticket member. Memberships are now available for the 2023 season. Stay connected to the team all year round, not just on game days. A lot of cool stuff. A lot of exclusive member benefits. Visit giants.com/tickets to find out all about it. Limited inventory is, however, available. 201-939-4513. Let's go back to the phone and say what up to Brandon in New Jersey. He's up next. Hi, Brandon.
What's going on, guys?
What's up?
Real quick, Lance, 7th rounder. Wasn't Tate Crowder Mr. Irrelevant?
Yes.
Crowder was 7th rounder.
It's funny. Lance and I both had that up, and I was going to bring that up. Tate Crowder's one, and the one before that is probably Bobby Hart, who started a significant amount of games for the Giants.
But my main point was noticing them in the preseason. I don't remember
of their rookie year, correct?
I don't remember talking about Crowder and Hart so much in the preseason. So yeah, those are two good examples of guys that did contribute their rookie years. But we're talking about Jordan Riley after the first 2 preseason games. I don't remember that holding true for those other 2 guys.
Michael Cox, Marcus Kuhn. They also had small roles, time and time again. They're pretty good. And then Matt Dodge did stuff.
Yeah. Something tells me they don't want us to bring up that name.
Matt Dodge did stuff.
Yeah.
Brandon, what else you got?
All right. 2 points of clarification and then a small bone to pick with Schmelk ahead of your prediction shows. My clarifications. Did Breida play?
Yeah, Breida was with the first team offense, that first drive, yes. He did not run the football, but he did play.
That's why I didn't see him, because it's like we didn't run it at all.
I will check to see how many snaps he played for you.
Okay. My second point of clarification is, let's say, I'll give you an example. James Robinson, let's say, gets cut. We signed him to a 1-year deal. If a 1-year deal isn't fully guaranteed, does that money return to the cap because he didn't make the roster?
It doesn't count. It does. Right now, that money does not count against the cap at all because he's not one of your 53 most expensive players.
Yeah, the 51 most expensive.
51 most expensive
is
players,
what counts now. Then we go to the regular season. That's when it goes to the 53.
Okay.
All right, pick your bone. What do you got?
Well, apparently he's calculating the salaries for running backs. So that's.
I should already know what time it is, but I would like, before you do your prediction show, please put a little disrespect on the Cowboys. I'm so tired of all the high-end respect when I don't see the safety, the defensive tackle.
Wait, hold on. Time out. Time out. You don't see a safety on the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, NFL players, sure. I mean, like, one that gives you nightmare. I'm talking about, like, Freddy Krueger. And I see 2 corners and a defensive end, right? Like, the rest of this squad is NFL players.
Do you realize what the Cowboys defense was ranked last year?
But that's last year. You know, every year nothing comes transfers year to year, pop.
Do you know what they added in the offseason?
What did they add? I'm sorry.
Stephon Gilmore, who was the defensive player of the year corner 2 years ago.
Yeah, Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson are their 2 safeties. I mean, that's a pretty strong tandem.
J-Ron Curse.
Yeah, sure.
He's a really good player.
I don't think that's a weakness for that team.
It's not,
I mean, those guys have been together.
At all. Now, defensive tackle, you're right about defensive tackle. They have some young, inexperienced guys
Mozzie Smith,
and run defense has been a weakness for them. If you want to pick on a weakness on their defense, you can go after defensive tackle, and you want to talk about your linebackers after Leighton Vander Esch, who's a pretty solid player, you could talk about that. But I don't think I think when we did our position rankings, I think universally, all four of us, me, you, Cross, and Paul, all had the Cowboys as the best safeties in the division, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Pearson had added the tallies up. The chart
it's
may
in the
be up.
document, actually. Yeah.
I mean, I certainly remember giving that duo its fair share of respect because, I mean, once again, you talked to us all about continuity under Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator. So, I mean, that to me, I think carries some weight.
Yeah, and if anything, I think I would have more questions about their offense than their defense. I think the defense is the strength of the roster.
Yeah, well, I mean,
and y'all got them high. Like every time people talk about the Cowboys, it's always like, who's the best in the NFC? And he's like, well, you got to put the Eagles up there. You got to put San Francisco up there, and then you got to put the Cowboys. But the Cowboys have just as many holes as the average NFL NFC team. Like we have
Brandon, how many games did the Cowboys win the last 2 years?
You back talking about years past, and I'm just
but
they have the same roster. They didn't lose anybody, Brandon. They didn't lose anyone.
Well, Brandon, but the Cowboys have a better track record than 95% of the NFC, so I think that does matter. You're talking about a team that's won 3 NFC East titles in Dak's 6 full years as the starting quarterback, plus they earned a playoff spot in another year. So that's 4 out of 6 years where he's been the starter and they made the playoffs. And you can't really point to a lot of other teams that fit that bill.
And they've won 12 games 2 consecutive years. That's a really hard thing to do.
They do a good job of beating up on their own division, which is where I'm actually getting at, where the disrespect has to, because if you look at the Giants roster last year and the Cowboys roster last year, then there's places we just couldn't exploit. We just didn't have enough talent on the field to exploit these pieces. So they look better, right? So,
well, I mean, in fairness, though, I could say that about every NFC East team that played the AFC South last year. The schedule overall is tougher for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you can really make that point
100%
you made that point for all 4 NFC East teams. I think the fact that you're signaling out the Cowboys is just because you don't like them, and that's fine. You may not like the Cowboys. I'm not telling you to like them, but at least let's operate based on a factual background here. That's all.
It's a matter of respect, I think. Like when John was doing the Eagles, he was one with the Eagles guy a few months ago, and it was just like, the Eagles, you were glowing about them, and it just made me so mad. But it's like,
but they're good. No, but Brandon, look, it doesn't take anything away from the New York Giants, the progress they're making, and how good the team has become, and where they're headed, and how good the situation here. It doesn't take anything away to that to recognize that the 3 other really good teams in the conference are the Eagles, the 49ers, and the Cowboys. The Cowboys beat the Eagles twice last year in the regular season, Lance. Am I correct in saying
no, they
that?
split.
They split?
The Cooper Rush game they lost.
The Cooper Rush game they lost.
They won with Dak.
Right. Yeah. All I'm saying, Brandon, is that it doesn't take anything away. Brandon, let me ask you a question. When's the last time the Giants beat Dak Prescott?
We haven't, but our team hasn't been good enough. And that's why I was really getting to. It's like when you look at their division they have to play in, I think that those holes are getting exploited this year. I know you guys are real glowing about their safeties, but I just think they're NFL players. I'm not saying that they're scrubs. They're just NFL players, which means they can be beat. They have 2 all-stars on the outside, and they got a defensive end that we're going to have problems with.
By the way, they might have the deepest set of defensive ends in the entire NFL.
It's not just Micah Parsons.
I mean, I would have to just agree to this.
DeMarcus Lawrence? What is he, chop liver?
How about Dante Fowler?
Marcus where?
DeMarcus Lawrence, I'm talking about.
DeMarcus Lawrence,
Did you watch him again?
Brandon,
Brandon, thank you for the call,
it gets to a point. Listen, I understand he doesn't like the Cowboys,
and that's
fine.
fine.
I'm not going to dispute that. But then when you start having that get in the way of facts,
when you start
there's
killing,
no point of having this conversation.
Did you watch the first game last year with DeMarcus Lawrence face the Giants?
Yeah, I mean, what he did to Evan Neal in that game. Not only that, to say that they beat up on the division, the Cowboys were 8-4 in the conference last year.
That's fine.
You both had the safeties. Dallas was number 1 for both of you guys.
How about the other 2?
The other position groups?
No. How about the other 2
You're
hosts?
talking about Paul and Howard?
Yeah, how about Paul and Howard? Who would they have the safeties?
JC had...
Oh, yeah, Casillas. That's right.
JC had Dallas.
Now
Paul had Dallas as well.
Look, Dottino's the litmus test. If Dottino had that, he can't stand
You
Dallas.
all had Giants number 2.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Look, and guys, here's the thing. And we've talked about this, right? And this is why I actually hate the fact that it's a week 1 game, because I would like to see Dallas and the Giants play maybe first week of October. because you get the teams kind
I
of
would
into
say that
the
about
season
all
or whatever.
divisions, yeah.
100% agree. I'm with you. So I you know me. I've complained about it on the show a million times. I hate these week 1 division games. I don't want them. I think they're annoying. I want to see these two teams when you're kind of learning more about them and see them play. I think you get more out of that than you do in week 1. Here's the point. Dallas is a litmus test for the Giants. Dallas beat them twice last year. Philly beat them twice last year. Okay, and Dallas, once was without Dak Prescott even playing. It was with Cooper Rush as a starting quarterback, right?
That's correct. Yep.
So the goal here is, can the Giants close the distance and or catch and or pass Dallas and Philadelphia this year? Until they're able to do that, that's going to be the question. And by the way, if you want to say Dallas isn't any good, well, then catching Dallas isn't a big deal, right? If Dallas is just any other average NFC team, which belies evidence given they've won 12 games each of the last 2 years, then catching Dallas doesn't matter. But in reality, catching Dallas is a huge deal. If the Giants can finish this year with the same record as Dallas, or a better record than Dallas, that means they've taken tremendous strides. That's why that's a real lofty goal. It's going to be tough to do, but I think the Giants have closed the distance. I think if you look at the talent on the roster, and I think, Brendan goes too far one way, but I do think if you look at the talent on the two rosters, based on where we were at the start of last year and where we are at the start of this year, the Giants have closed the gap. It's a lot closer than it was. I mean, even if you look at our, position ranking show from June and compare last year's numbers to this year's numbers, I only had the Giants, I think, 1 or 2 points off of Dallas this year. Last year, I probably had them 10 points off of Dallas in that same illustration, right? They've closed the gap. They're getting a lot closer. And I think it's going to be very exciting to see how they match up in this first week to see exactly how much they have closed the gap in that thing, because that's the goal, right? You look at goals for this team, it's to win the division. Well, guess what? To win the division, you got to pass the two teams that finished ahead of you in the division the last 2 years, Dallas and Philadelphia. And yeah, Philadelphia is very talented. They only finished with one more win than Dallas in the regular season last year.
Oh, yeah, those two teams were neck and neck. Yeah, that's why I'm saying. I mean, it's a jump into both of those areas, not just one team. Yeah. You're looking to really branch the gap with respect to the trenches. I mean, that's where the biggest difference
100%.
is on the defensive lines and the offensive lines. That's why, we're not just talking about Micah Parsons. You got to handle DeMarcus Lawrence. And then in terms of the offensive line with respect to the Cowboys, they've had some changes over the course of the last few years. There's no doubt about that. Zach Martin has returned to camp. Tyron Smith is still there. Tyler Smith has turned into be a nice draft pick. But can Dexter Lawrence and company, can they all of a sudden wreak some havoc and get some pressure on Dak and slow down Tony Pollard so that Dallas doesn't get those big chunks of yardage that we've seen in years past? And by the way, you were bringing up the last time that the Giants beat the Cowboys with Dak Prescott. If memory serves me correct, I don't think that's happened since Dak's rookie year.
2016, yep,
when the Giants actually swept the Cowboys, and that was really the only blemish on Dallas's resume.
Exactly.
If you go back to that season, because Dallas won the division, the Giants got a wild card.
12-4 that year for Dallas, I remember, right?
So, I mean, you're talking about, that's why I found it troubling, that last statement about, the Cowboys just beat up the NFC East.
Their schedules are the same except for 2 games.
You don't have that track record if you're just beating up the NFC East. And by the way, I went back 2 years ago. Dallas was 10-2 against the conference. So they were 8-4 last year. They were 10-2 2 years ago. Once again, the facts just don't hold true to the pure emotion of that last caller.
And again, I think the Giants are close. And I think that's a big deal, because I think if you talk to analysts, like if you look at raw, roster talent in the league, Dallas is one of them, Philly and San Francisco are cut above everyone else in the NFC.
Yeah.
They just are. I mean, if you look at the premium positions, cornerback, wide receiver, tackles, and it's just kind of where we're at, folks.
Well,
and that's okay. That doesn't take anything away from the Giants. It just means it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be fun to see if they can take these teams off their relatively place in the hierarchy. And that's going to be fun to watch. I can't wait to see the Giants try and do that. It's going to be great.
I would agree with you. I think the 3 most balanced teams in the NFC is definitely the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Niners. And I think the rest of the conference is really wide open, which I think is encouraging for everybody.
100%.
Not name those 3 teams. Because I was doing this exercise on my Sirius show the other day. I went through every quarterback in the NFC. And, you have a hard time putting together a substantive list within the NFC
Daniel
conference.
Daniel Jones could be the 4th or 5th best quarterback in the conference
without a doubt.
year.
Yeah,
easily.
The bottom line is Dak is the most experienced, polished quarterback in the conference right now. With Aaron
in terms
leaving,
of track record.
Yeah,
Now you have
with track
Hurts. Now Hurts almost won MVP last year.
Yeah, but the bottom,
yes.
but Hurts hasn't done it for as many years as Dak has done.
Correct.
It. So if you're combining everything, I'm not just talking about who's flashiest to you. I'm
and
talking
by the
about
way, Cousins too. Cousins has a really good track record.
Dak and those were the two guys I brought into the conversation. And then after that, you're talking about guys that have a track record of 1 or 2 years, showed some flashes, a bunch of rookies. So I think that tells you all you need to know about the NFC overall. But there's a reason why we have talked about those 3 teams in recent history. It's because they've been balanced and they have been consistent. And until you do that, then it's fair to question everybody else. With respect to the NFC.
939-451. And by the way, if the Giants were in the NFC North or the NFC South, I'd probably pick them to win the division.
Oh, yeah. They probably would be in the position of any other team if you swap the divisions.
Absolutely.
Sure.
All right, let's go to Andrew in Virginia. He's up next. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, guys. Great job. It's the 2 BBK Maestros. Is there going to be a BBK community-wide roundtable at some point before the season starts? Like maybe the week before kickoff?
What do you mean?
And
I don't understand the question.
Like you two, Cross, Madeline, you guys going to have like a full panel of everyone?
We don't have a big enough table for that, to be totally
it's not in the budget. Yeah.
So I'm not sure we're going to be able to figure that one out. We might have to do that over Zoom if we do it, but yeah, go ahead.
And then who's the leader in the locker room so far in the ping pong table? Who are the couple guys that are leading the way if they are still playing ping pong?
We have not been allowed in the locker room yet. In training camp, everything is outside. They bring the guys out to us, so we have not been inside the locker room yet. So I cannot speak to that. But I can tell you, and I appreciate the call. Thank you, Andrew. Sills and Saquon last year were 2 of the better
Saquon's
guys.
very
for
competitive.
Sure.
Yeah. So I would say by default they have to still be the clubhouse leaders until somebody unseats them. Yeah.
Much like our conversation with the NFC East.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we still go with the teams last season
correct.
that set the tempo until there's perhaps a new kid on the block.
Remember, every year is new, though. The ping pong schools don't necessarily traverse from one year to the other. I can't do that.
Yes.
So I can't.
Well, you're trying to build the parallels to bring us over. No, but in all seriousness,
you can screen one more, Pearson.
That last caller was making the point that I'll be the first one to tell you, I always throw this out because I say this every year. Just because you have success one year doesn't mean it rolls over. But here's the exception. The exception to that statement is when you do it for 5 out of 6 years leading into this season, I still can then give you the benefit of the doubt that there's a very good chance you are going to be able to duplicate that success.
Especially if you bring back a lot of the same guys on your roster.
And members of the coaching staff, too.
Yeah,
which holds true for Dallas. And Philadelphia's had some changes, but the core of the roster, and Sirianni still is there.
Same
from
for
an
San
offensive standpoint. San Francisco with Kyle
Mm-hmm.
Shanahan. And, they promoted from within to replace the D'Amico Ryans. So all of that holds true. Whereas in comparison, the Giants, last year was encouraging, exceeded expectations, but that was only 1 year of a sample size that we have to operate, right, with Brian Dable and company.
Like same thing for the Vikings last year. Like we're not putting the Vikings
Kevin O'Connell,
we're not putting the Vikings in the same category as those other 3 teams.
Well, here's another reason why. When you win 11 games by 1 score in multiple years in a row, John, then I will give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I will question whether or not you can walk that fine line and continue to close out games. So it's not just that Kevin O'Connell was new. It was the fact that they went 11-0 in 1-score games.
Right. And look,
you're just not going to do that consecutive years.
And the other thing that I look at too, Lance, because records can sometimes be deceiving, to your point with what we talked about with
context,
with point differential, winning close games and stuff like that. Yep. So I like to look at point differential. It tells you about the relative dominance of certain teams, right? Well, last year, Philly was plus 133.
Only 133.
Dallas was plus 125, and San Francisco was plus 173.
So they weren't walking that fine line.
There was no other NFC team last year, oh my gosh, that was better than plus 26.
Look at the drop-off.
So there is 100 points worth of point differential that separates those 3 teams from the rest of the conference. So
that doesn't tell you all you need to know. I don't know.
In short, exactly. That's why I put those 3 teams on a different tier for now than the rest of the division.
Now, where were the Giants, just out of curiosity? I forget off the top of my head.
Lions were plus 26. They were the next team in the group.
Okay.
Seahawks were plus 6. They were the next team. And then you had the Packers were -1, the Vikings were -3, the Giants were -6. They were all in that same, right around even type of zone.
And that's another reason why when you have a borderline 500 record, And I know there's now 17 games, but if you're in that 9-8, 10-7 territory, and you play so many close games, and you have a -6 turnover differential or -5, something's got to help balance those numbers out a little bit more the following season, John, because if you play some of those closer games, you can't expect the ball to bounce your way, and you can't rely on your defense saving you. You're going to have to be put to the test where you score more points. So I would agree with you. I think point differential is a very interesting indicator that tells you, and this goes back to, John, you and I have had this conversation, that 2016 team that we were talking about earlier with respect to beating Dak twice, they played a lot of close games. They weren't a dominant 11-win team that year.
The point differential tells you how many games did this team win going away, where it's not close in the fourth quarter, right? Because those are games that show how dominant a team can be. Look, because that team in 2016 didn't score a lot of points. They were a defensive-oriented team.
Correct. I'm out of curiosity. I'm bringing up the 2016 standings. I'm curious what the point differential was.
I bet you
that season for the Giants.
Let's see.
The Giants in 2016, you were close, plus 26.
Yeah, that was probably that was my
By
guess.
the way, the Cowboys were plus 115 that season. That was the difference between Dallas and the Giants in the regular season.
Yeah. And by the way, to your point, the one year that Dallas did not have success the last few years was the year that Dak missed the whole year.
He played 5 games. That was 2020.
So, exactly.
They had a revolving door of quarterbacks.
201-939-4513. And as Giant fans can attest to 2 years ago, when you have a revolving door of quarterbacks, it generally does not go very well.
Yes, and it's not fun either.
No.
Both from a broadcasting and a consumption standpoint.
Let us never relive that. Jeff in Rhode Island, he's up next. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, fellas. How you doing today?
We're great, Jeff. How are you?
That's good. Doing okay, buddy. I was actually able to see the game Friday night, so that was good, and I'm going to be able to see the Jets game this Saturday.
Oh, that's great.
I'm very happy about that, yeah. Just a couple of comments and a question.
Yes.
I was very surprised to see Wan'Dale Robinson being able to come off the PUP this soon. I mean, he only had surgery like 8 months ago or so. And I thought, I'm just surprised by that because from what I understood, it always took quite a bit of time to get over an ACL, and become back 100%. So that's
Did I miss
one.
something, Lance?
No, he never came off PUP.
No,
I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
Jeff, he's still on PUP. He's not off PUP yet.
Oh, I thought I saw on Twitter this morning he was coming off today.
Nope.
I have that has not happened officially. If that was a report,
Okay.
Pearson, did you see that? Did you see any that about a report? I didn't.
No,
Lance,
I've not
did you
seen
see
anything. I mean, I read Brian Dable's comments earlier in the show.
Joe Shane said on a radio interview like a couple weeks ago that he could be coming off, within a week or two, and that's kind of the only thing we've seen. But no, nothing in that is official, Jeff. I'm like, oh, did I miss something while the show was going on? You scared me there for a second.
Well, maybe I misread it. Does anybody else think that Darren Waller is more like a Plaxico than a tight end besides me? Has anybody got that impression?
Look, I think they will use him, Jeff, as an X-receiver. And by X-receiver, you mean a guy that's lined up by himself, one-on-one on one side of the field that you trust to win one-on-one. He will be used in that spot, which is the exact type of spot that they use Plaxico Burress in. Now, is he going to be there full-time like Burress? No. Can he be used in that type of position? Yes. Is he as fast down the field on deep balls as Plaxico? Probably not. But look, he's going to be their number one big-bodied target. He just is. That's what he's going to be.
Right.
And the Raiders used him in a spot like that plenty of times where, they put him out wide and they had him go one-on-one, and they even threw him the deep ball in that situation. I remember there was a primetime game, I think it was Raiders-Dolphins, and you had Derek Carr got hurt. Mariota came in, and one of Mariota's first passes was deep down the left sideline to Darren Waller for a touchdown. So if the Raiders did that, then the Giants could certainly tap into that.
Yeah, okay, good. One other thing, have you anybody there ever gotten any feedback about how the new field is from anybody?
It's actually funny. Sterling Shepard was actually asked that today in media availability, Jeff. And for him, he said it feels a little bit thicker, but he kind of shrugged and he said, for me, turf is turf. It really doesn't make much of a difference to me. Brian Dable said he thinks it's been fine. I don't think I've heard any other players talk about it yet, but we haven't heard any complaints. No one got hurt, so I guess those are 2 good check marks.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, not being injured. I hope it stays that way. Okay, guys. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Hey, appreciate the call. And JKB0209-121 chimes in. Ahmad Bradshaw, 7th-round pick. That would obviously be, and he's 100% right. I was going to bring him up. I didn't go all the way back to 2007. I stopped short of like 2010. Sure. But yes. Yeah. He's obviously a big 7th-round pick that contributed that year. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, tweeter, that I think Bradshaw, the preseason that year, he might have had a foot injury. I'm not sure he was that active that preseason.
I don't remember him being extremely active, and that's why I go
I'd
back.
have to check
that was the
but
preface to my comment.
I don't remember that necessarily, but it's a good tweet.
I remember us talking about Bradshaw when the regular season rolled around and some of the plays, especially late in the season. I don't remember having a conversation about the preseason and once again saying, okay, watch out for this player. And that's why I think Jordan Riley stands out, because we're talking about every single preseason game. We discussed something that he did that could very well apply to the regular season. All those other guys, Tate Crowder and some of those offensive linemen we threw out, I don't recall ever discussing, okay, I could see a scenario where the Giants coaching staff has enough confidence that they would put them in, forget a starting spot, but just having some type of a role where they get X amount of snaps per game. And Bradshaw, in fairness, did wind up carving out a very nice role for him, and multiple seasons turned out to be that case. But preseason, you'd be very hard-pressed to put somebody in the conversation of Jordan Riley. And that, to me, is what is extremely impressive, especially when you take into consideration how they went about finding him through the scouting process.
I got to be honest with you.
What are you trying to bring up, the preseason log?
Let's see if I have preseason.
I don't think you can
I have
get
regular
that. Yeah,
season and postseason. I cannot.
Yeah.
I tried 3 or 4 different things.
Did you
that
try,
I usually
if
check.
you Google maybe 2007 preseason stats?
Nothing comes up. I
You
tried.
sure? Nothing?
Yeah, I tried.
Sometimes you'll get some type of archaic.
Pearson, we're already over. Tell
Game
Charlie. Ask Charlie if he can call back another show. I just don't want to start this conversation here at 2:31. We're more than welcome to take him on a different show. I just don't want to start it this late. Is he okay with that? He's cool. Not that I really care.
Well, I'm sure he has some obscure 7th-round pick that he'd like to throw out. So
I'm sure he
it's a
does.
shame that the viewers and the listeners won't get him to chime in. I could tell that everybody's all emotionally worked up, so we want to keep everybody in their thoughts and prayers to somehow get through the remainder of this show without hearing from Charlie.
Surely someone that attended Maine University. Or University of Maine, I guess.
Oh, yes. Well, the guy that I'm thinking of was not a draft pick, so he can't make a case for that individual. If we're talking about somebody in recent history, that was at least on the roster that I'm referring to. Well, I'm talking about the wide receiver turned tight end. Oh, that's who I was referring to. Yeah.
I think he just pick up. I think he picked up somewhere. Charlie called up about. He was all excited a couple weeks.
Oh,
ago.
really? Of course. Well, yeah, it's like the former French wide receiver. Remember, he got picked up by the Falcons, and we almost threw a parade. The Canyon of Heroes was reserved because
get the
Charlie
man's name right. Pepe Le Pew.
I'm sorry,
to Charlie.
Yes. Well, okay.
That would be Anthony.
Excusez-moi.
That would be. That's what Charlie joked with him, and then we always had to correct him. Anthony Dablé. That was the name of the French wide receiver.
Well, I mean,
which I can't believe I remember, by the way.
Well, kudos to you. Congratulations. But the bottom line is, these players, you would think that he would have such a fascination with them that rolling the name off his tongue would be relatively easy to do, right? But clearly they don't make that level of impact on him.
He will occasionally send me Joe Kim Noah highlights, by the way, on Twitter.
Well, I'm glad that at least you get
fun of himself
the pride of that.
I appreciate that.
Congratulations. Well, now we're going to get Tim Tebow highlights because we've had now former basketball players and broadcasters / NFL players that never were on the Giants roster. We're equal opportunists on
We
this
didn't even
program.
take his call. We ended up talking about him anyway. So Charlie wins.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Well, anytime we can have fun at his expense, I won't shy away from that. So
good stuff.
That's a win for me, too. You got it.
Tomorrow, I believe we're back with Madeline Burke and Howard Cross on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Check that out. Thanks for being with us, everybody. And we'll see you tomorrow. And again, that's 11 a.m., a new time. Make sure you check it out.